15 men with guns, one target, 9 hours to decide if Brooklyn stays theirs or becomes a graveyard. What happened in that apartment didn't need bullets, it needed a phone call. The apartment is in East Flatbush. 3rd floor. Corner unit. Windows facing the street. Bumpy Johnson's nephew walks in just after midnight. He's not hiding. He's not running. He's visiting someone, a friend, a contact, someone who said they needed to talk. The door closes behind him. Outside, 15 men are already in position. Some across the street, some in parked cars, 2 in the stairwell below. They've been waiting for hours. This isn't random. This is organized. This is calculated. They know his route. They know his schedule. They know he'd come here. The nephew moves through the apartment slowly. Something feels wrong. Not loud wrong. Quiet wrong. The kind of wrong that lives in the air before violence. He walks to the window. Looks down at the street. A car that shouldn't be there. A man standing too still. Another one on the corner. Hands in his pockets. Eyes up. He counts 3, then 5, then stops counting, because it doesn't matter how many there are. What matters is they're not moving yet. They're waiting for him to run, waiting for him to panic, waiting for him to make the first mistake. He doesn't. He steps back from the window, pulls the curtain closed, locks the door, bolts it. Then he sits down on the couch, quiet, calm, and he takes out his phone. Not to call 911, not to call a crew for backup. He calls someone older, someone who remembers Harlem in the 60s, someone who knew Bumpy when Bumpy still walked these streets. The line rings twice. A voice answers. The nephew says 5 words. They're outside. Bumpy's nephew. 15. Then he hangs up. Outside, the men are getting restless. One of them checks his watch. Another lights a cigarette. They expected this to be fast. In and out. A message sent. But the nephew hasn't moved. Hasn't run. Hasn't even turned off the lights. One of the hitmen, younger, eager, pulls his gun. The older one next to him puts a hand on his wrist. Not yet. Why not? He's trapped. Because something's wrong. What's wrong? He's alone. We're 15 deep. The older man doesn't answer. He just watches the window. Because he's been doing this long enough to know, when a man doesn't run, it's not because he's brave. It's because he doesn't have to. Inside the apartment, the nephew sits in silence. No TV. No music. Just breathing. He's not waiting for rescue. He's waiting for the name to do what it's always done. Carry weight. Minutes pass like hours. The block is too quiet now. Even the hitmen feel it. One of them gets a text. He reads it. His face changes. We got a problem. What problem? Words out. People know we're here. So what? This is Brooklyn. This is our block. Yeah, but it's his name. No one says anything. Because they all know what that means. Bumpy Johnson's nephew isn't just a target. He's a symbol. And in New York, you don't touch symbols without permission from people higher than money. The 15 men start looking at each other now, not with confidence, with doubt, because this was supposed to be simple. A hit, a body, a message, but now it feels like they're the ones being watched. Another text comes through, then another. One of the hitmen steps back toward his car. Where you going? I'm out. We're in the middle of this. Nah, you're in the middle of this. I'm going home. They'll know you punked out. I'd rather be a coward tomorrow than dead tonight. He leaves. Then another one follows. Then 2 more. Inside the apartment, the nephew finally stands. He walks to the window again, pulls the curtain just slightly, counts the cars, counts the men. Less now, fewer shadows, fewer watchers. He texts 1 word, good. Then he sits back down and waits. Because Bumpy Johnson taught his family one thing above all: power isn't what you do, it's what you don't have to do. And right now, 9 hours are about to prove that lesson all over again. Bumpy Johnson died in 1968, but his name never did. It lived in the old men who still tell stories on 145th Street. It lived in the corners where violence used to rule until Bumpy decided it wouldn't. It lived in the kind of silence that comes after someone speaks and nobody dares interrupt. The nephew grew up hearing that name before he understood what it meant, before he knew about the numbers, rackets, the alliances, the wars that never made the papers, before he knew his uncle controlled Harlem not with fear, but with something deeper, respect, the kind you can't buy, can't fake, can't steal. Bumpy didn't run Harlem like a gang. He ran it like a country. He had rules, structure, loyalty that went both ways. If you were in his circle, you were protected. Your family was protected. Your block was protected. But if you crossed him, there was no second chance. Not because he was cruel, because he was consistent. And consistency is the only language power understands. People forget that now. They think crime is chaos, that the streets are just violence and desperation. But in Bumpy's Harlem, there was order. The cops knew it. The mob knew it. Even the politicians knew it. You didn't move weight in Harlem without Bumpy's blessing. You didn't start a war without calculating what it would cost. And you sure as hell didn't touch his family. That last rule? It didn't die with him. The nephew learned that early. He was 16 the first time someone tested it. A crew from the Bronx, young, hungry, stupid. They tried to run a shakedown on a store Bumpy used to protect. The owner called the nephew, not because the nephew was dangerous, because the name was. The nephew showed up alone. No gun, no crew. Just walked in and stood there. The Bronx boys laughed. You Bumpy's nephew? So what? Bumpy's dead. Yeah, the nephew said, but his friends aren't. Within an hour, 3 cars pulled up. Old men, quiet men, men who didn't need to raise their voices. They didn't say much, just looked at the Bronx crew, then looked at the nephew. One of them spoke. You know whose block this is? Man, that's old history. I'm not asking about history. I'm asking if you know. Silence. Get out. They left. Not because of the nephew, because of the weight behind him. That's what people don't understand about legacy. It's not about what you did. It's about what people remember you could do. Bumpy Johnson could have burned Harlem to the ground. He could have turned it into a war zone, but he didn't. He built something, protected something, left something behind that didn't need him alive to survive. The nephew carries that now, not because he wants to, because he has to. Every time someone hears his last name, they make a calculation. Is it worth it? Is this fight worth going to war with the memory of a man who never lost? Most of the time, the answer is no. But tonight, 15 men thought different. They thought Brooklyn was far enough from Harlem. They thought the old rules didn't apply anymore. They thought a name was just a name. They were wrong. Because here's the thing about Bumpy's legacy. It's not just in Harlem. It's in every old head who remembers the way things used to work. Every grandmother who recalls the summer Bumpy stopped a race riot with a handshake. Every corner store owner who never got robbed because Bumpy said the block was off limits. Every kid who grew up safe because Bumpy decided their street mattered. That debt doesn't expire. It compounds. And tonight, it's about to come due. The nephew sits in that apartment, phone in hand, knowing exactly what's happening outside. Not because he's orchestrating it, because he doesn't have to. The machine Bumpy built 40 years ago is still running, still protecting, still reminding people that some names don't fade. They echo. And in Brooklyn, right now, that echo is getting louder. Bumpy Johnson's nephew doesn't need to be a gangster. He doesn't need to be feared. He just needs to be exactly who he is. The blood of a man who turned Harlem into a kingdom. And kingdoms don't fall just because the king dies. They fall when people forget why they bowed in the first place. Brooklyn's about to remember. 1 hour in. The nephew hasn't moved from the couch. He's not pacing. Not checking the window every 5 minutes. Not sweating. He's just sitting. Phone on the armrest. Lights still on. Like he's waiting for a friend to pick him up. Outside, the 15 men are starting to feel it. That pressure. That wrongness. One of them is standing by a car, smoking his third cigarette. Another's in the stairwell, gun heavy in his waistband, wondering why they haven't gotten the signal yet. The leader, the one who planned this, who called the crew, who promised it'd be easy, checks his phone. Nothing. He looks up at the window. Still lit. Still quiet. He texts the man in the stairwell. He alone? Yeah. Door's locked. Hasn't moved. Then what's the problem? No response. Because the problem isn't what they can see. It's what they can't. Inside, the nephew makes his second call. This one's to a woman in Queens. 70 years old. Ran a boarding house in the 80s. Bumpy stayed there once when the heat was too heavy uptown. She answers on the first ring. I heard. Good. Flatbush, right? Yeah. Give me 20 minutes. She hangs up. The nephew scrolls through his contacts. Finds another number. This one's a cousin. Not blood, but close enough. Runs a car service in Bed-Stuy. Yo, it's me. Uphosa. Where you at? East Flatbush. Locked in. 15 deep outside. 15? Yeah. They touch you? Not yet. They won't. Click. 3 more calls. Each one short. Each one calm. No panic. No begging. Just information. And every person he calls says the same thing. I'm coming. Not because they owe the nephew. Because they owe Bumpy. And debt like that doesn't care about decades. Outside, a new car pulls up. It's not one of the hitmen. It's an old Cadillac. Clean, slow. It parks across the street. Engine off. Lights off. Nobody gets out. One of the hitmen walks over, taps on the window. The window rolls down. An old man. Gray beard. Reading glasses. You lost, Pops? Nah. I'm right where I need to be. This block's closed tonight. That's so? Yeah. So move. The old man smiles, doesn't move. I knew Bumpy Johnson. The hitman's face changes. So? So I'm staying. The hitman looks back at the others, shrugs. Your funeral. But the old man doesn't look worried. He just rolls the window back up and sits there, watching. 15 minutes later, another car. Then another. Not aggressive. Not rolling deep. Just arriving, parking, sitting. Old men. A few women. People who shouldn't be out at this hour. But they are, and they're not leaving. One of the younger hitmen walks up to the leader. Yo, we got a situation. What situation? Look around. The leader does. Counts 5 new cars. None of them were there an hour ago. None of them are cops. None of them are crews. Just people. Old people. Sitting in their cars like they're watching a play. Who are they? I don't know. But they're not leaving. The leader pulls out his phone. Calls the man who hired him. We got a problem. What problem? I paid you to handle one guy. Yeah, but people are showing up. What people? I don't know. Old heads. Just sitting in cars. Watching. So, ignore them. It's not that simple. Why not? Because they're not scared. A pause on the other end. You telling me you can't handle a bunch of senior citizens? I'm telling you this doesn't feel right. Then make it right. You got 2 hours. Click. The leader looks at his crew. Half of them are gone now. Not because anyone told them to leave. Because they felt the shift. You spend enough time in the streets. You learn to read the air. And right now, the air says, this isn't just a hit anymore. It's a test. A test of whether Bumpy's name still means something. Whether his people still move when it's invoked. Whether Brooklyn remembers who controlled these streets before the new generation thought they owned them. Inside, the nephew finally stands. He walks to the kitchen, pours himself water, drinks it slowly. Then he checks his phone. 7 messages. All the same. I'm outside. We hear. Say the word. He doesn't respond. Doesn't need to. They didn't come to fight. They came to stand. And sometimes, standing is louder than shooting. The nephew walks back to the couch, sits down, looks at the clock. 3 hours in. 6 more to go. He closes his eyes. Not because he's tired, because he already knows how this ends. The only question is whether the men outside are smart enough to realize it. before it's too late. 4 hours in, the block doesn't look the same anymore. What started as 15 men in position has turned into something else. A standoff that nobody planned. The hitmen are still there. Some of them. Maybe 9 now. But they're not alone anymore. There are 18 cars parked on the street. 18. None of them blocking anything. None of them causing trouble. Just present. One of the hitmen, young, maybe 23, looks at his partner. This is crazy, man. What is? All these people just sitting there. They're not doing anything. Exactly. That's what's crazy. The partner doesn't respond. Because he feels it too. This isn't a rescue mission. This isn't a counter-ambush. It's a reminder. A reminder that Bumpy Johnson's Harlem wasn't built on violence alone. It was built on something deeper. Loyalty. The kind that doesn't fade when someone dies. The kind that passes down through generations like a story no one wants to forget. Inside the apartment, the nephew gets another call. This time, it's someone he doesn't recognize. He answers anyway. Yeah? You don't know me. Okay. But I know your uncle. The nephew waits. 1965. I was 14. Got jumped by some Italians near the docks. They were gonna kill me. Silence. Bumpy saw it happen. Didn't know me. Didn't know my family. Just saw it. The voice cracks a little. He stopped them. Told them if they touched me, they'd answer to him. They left. I went home. The nephew listens. I never forgot that. Never got to thank him. You don't have to. I'm downstairs. Blue Chevy. I'm not leaving till you walk out safe. Click. The nephew sets the phone down. Stares at it. He's heard stories like this his whole life, but hearing them now here, in the middle of this, hits different. Because it means Bumpy didn't just control territory. He earned something you can't take by force. He earned people. Outside, one of the older men gets out of his car. He's slow. Uses a cane. Walks right past the hitmen, like they're not even there. Stops at the building entrance. Doesn't go inside. Just stands there. One of the hitmen approaches him. Old man. Go home. Can't do that. Why not? Because I owe a debt. You don't owe us nothing. Not to you. The old man looks up at the 3rd floor. To him. The hitman doesn't know what to say. Look, we don't want trouble with you. Then don't make it. The old man doesn't raise his voice. Doesn't threaten. Doesn't even look angry. He just stands there, immovable. The hitman backs off. Because there's nothing you can do with someone who isn't afraid to die for a principle. Another car pulls up. A woman this time. Mid-50s. Dressed like she just came from church. She parks, gets out, walks to the front of the building, stands next to the old man. Doesn't say a word. Then another person. Then 2 more. Now, there are 6 people standing outside the entrance. Not blocking it. Not armed. Just standing. The leader of the hitmen walks over. What is this? The woman looks at him. You're making a mistake. I'm doing a job. No. You're touching someone you don't understand. He's just a man. He's Bumpy Johnson's blood. The leader laughs, but it's not confident anymore. Bumpy's been dead 50 years, and yet here we are. She doesn't blink. You think this is about him being alive or dead? This is about what he stood for, who he protected, what he built. That's ancient history. History doesn't die. It just waits. The leader looks around. More people now. Maybe 25, 30, all ages, all backgrounds. Some he recognizes from the neighborhood. Some he's never seen, but they all have one thing in common. They're not afraid. One of his crew walks up. Boss, we gotta go. We're not done. Yeah. We are. What are you talking about? Look around, man. This isn't a hit anymore. This is a war we can't win. It's a bunch of old people. It's a bunch of people who remember. And that's worse. The leader's phone buzzes. A text from someone in the crew who already left. Police rolling soon. Words out. Get out while you can. He looks at the apartment window. Still lit. Still quiet. The nephew hasn't done anything. Hasn't fired a shot. Hasn't called for backup. Hasn't even shown his face. And somehow, that's exactly why they're losing. Because this isn't about violence, it's about legacy. And you can't kill a legacy with a bullet. Inside, the nephew gets one more call. It's the first number he dialed. The old head from Harlem. It's done. What's done? The block. Everybody knows. You're untouchable tonight. How many people came? Does it matter? No. Then stop counting. Just know this. Brooklyn didn't forget. Harlem didn't forget. And anyone who thought they could touch you just learned what your name really means. The nephew nods to himself. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your uncle. He's the one who taught us how to move. The line goes dead. The nephew stands, walks to the window one last time, looks down. The hitmen are leaving, not running, not rushing, just leaving. Cars pulling out, shadows fading, and in their place, 30 people still standing, watching, making sure he's safe. He doesn't know most of them, but they know him, or at least they know what he represents. A time when the streets had rules, when power meant something more than guns. When respect wasn't given, it was built, brick by brick, over decades. And tonight, those bricks held. The nephew finally unlocks the door, but he doesn't leave yet, because there are still 3 more hours till sunrise. And some lessons are worth waiting for. 7 hours in. The sun hasn't risen yet. But the darkness feels different now. Lighter, not because of the streetlights, because the weight has shifted. The nephew finally opens the door. Slowly, no rush, no hesitation. He steps into the hallway, listens. Silence. He walks down the stairs. One flight, then another. When he reaches the ground floor, he pushes open the front door. Cool air hits his face. And there they are, 30 people, maybe more now, standing, sitting in cars, leaning against walls, all watching. The old man with the cane nods at him. The woman from earlier smiles. Soft, proud. A younger guy, maybe 30, steps forward. You good? Yeah. Need a ride? Nah. I'm good. The nephew looks around, takes it all in. These people didn't come because he called them. They came because a name echoed through Brooklyn, and they answered. Some of them knew Bumpy personally. Some only heard the stories. But it didn't matter. Because legacy isn't about memory. It's about action. It's about showing up when it counts. The nephew walks to the curb, stops, turns back to the crowd. Thank you. Nobody responds. They don't need to. This wasn't a favor. This wasn't charity. This was a debt being honored, a promise being kept. The kind Bumpy made 50 years ago when he decided Harlem wouldn't be run by chaos. When he decided protection meant something. When he decided his word was law, not because of violence, but because of consistency. The nephew starts walking down the block. Slow, calm, like he's walking home from a friend's house. Not a single person follows him. They just watch until he turns the corner. Then, one by one, they leave. Cars pull out. Engines start. Doors close. The block empties. By the time the sun comes up, it looks like nothing ever happened. No police tape, no bodies, no bullets in the walls. Just a quiet Brooklyn street. But the hitmen know what happened. The ones who stayed till the end. The ones who left early. They all know. They came to send a message. And instead, they got one. Miles away, in a basement in Brownsville, the man who ordered the hit sits at a table. His phone rings. He answers. It's done? No. What do you mean, no? I mean we left. Silence. You left? Yeah. Why? Because it wasn't worth it. I paid you. Keep your money. We're out. You're telling me 15 men couldn't handle one guy? It wasn't one guy. Then who was it? A long pause. Brooklyn. The line goes dead. The man sits there, phone in hand. He's heard the stories about Bumpy Johnson, about the old days, about how Harlem used to move, but he thought they were just stories, myths, legends, things people said to make themselves feel important. Now he knows better, because myths don't make 30 people show up in the middle of the night. Myths don't make a crew walk away from a paid job. Myths don't turn a hit into a history lesson. He sets the phone down, looks at his hands, and realizes he just tried to kill a ghost. Back in the apartment, the friend who invited the nephew over finally comes out of the back room. He's been hiding this whole time, shaking. "Man, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they were coming." The nephew looks at him, doesn't say anything. "I thought it was just a meeting, just a talk. I didn't know they were setting you up." Still nothing. "Say something, man." The nephew finally speaks. "You should leave Brooklyn." "What?" "Tonight. Pack your stuff. Go." "I didn't." "I know." "Then why?" "Because they'll think you did. And when they come back, I won't be here to stop it." The friend's face goes pale. "They're coming back?" "Maybe. Maybe not. But you don't wait to find out." The nephew walks to the door, stops. Bumpy used to say something. The friend waits. He said the smartest move in a war is not being there when it starts. The nephew leaves. The friend stands there, alone, thinking about how close he came to being a casualty in a war he didn't even know was happening. 3 days later, a barbershop in Harlem, old men sitting around, talking, laughing. One of them brings it up. "You hear what happened in Brooklyn?" "What happened?" "Bumpy's nephew got ambushed. 15 deep." "15? Yeah." "What did he do?" "Nothing." "Nothing?" "Sat there. Made some calls. People showed up. Hitmen left." One of the old men laughs. "That's Bumpy's blood right there." "What you mean?" "I mean he didn't need to do nothing. The name did it for him." Another old man shakes his head. "That's the difference between power and fear. Fear makes people move when you're in the room. Power makes them move when you're not." They all nod, because they remember. They remember when Bumpy walked into a room and everything stopped. Not because he threatened anyone, because everyone knew what he represented. Order, protection, principle, things the streets don't have anymore. Think his nephew gonna follow that path? Don't matter. Path's already laid. He just gotta walk it. You think he will? I think he just did. The nephew sits in his apartment, not the one in Brooklyn. His own place. Uptown. He hasn't told anyone what happened. Hasn't bragged. Hasn't posted. Hasn't made a scene. Because that's not how power moves. Power is quiet. Power is patient. Power is knowing you don't have to prove anything because the proof already exists. He looks at his phone. 50 messages. Calls from people checking in. People he hasn't heard from in years. All saying the same thing. "Glad you're safe. We heard." Bumpy would be proud. He doesn't respond to most of them. Just reads them and thinks about the weight of a name. How it can save you. How it can trap you. How it can make you untouchable and unbearably visible at the same time. His uncle built something that outlived him. Now the question is, what will the nephew build? Will he live in the shadow, or will he cast his own? He doesn't know yet, but he has time to figure it out. Because tonight proved something. Bumpy Johnson's name doesn't need him alive to protect his blood. It just needs people to remember. And as long as they do, the nephew will never fight alone. Even when he's surrounded, even when he's outnumbered, even when the odds say he should be dead, the name will speak, and the streets will listen. That's not power. That's legacy. And legacy doesn't die. It just waits for the next generation to carry it. 9 hours. That's how long it took for 15 men with guns to realize they were in the wrong war. No shots fired, no blood spilled, no bodies. Just time and a name. That's the part people don't understand when they talk about power. They think it's about who's the loudest, who's the most violent, who's willing to go the furthest. But real power is what happens when you're not even in the room. It's the phone calls that get made on your behalf. The people who show up without being asked. The wars that end before they start, because everyone knows how they'll finish. Bumpy Johnson understood that. He didn't build his empire by being the most dangerous man in Harlem. He built it by being the most necessary one. People needed him, needed his order, needed his protection. And when you become necessary, you become untouchable. Because killing you doesn't solve the problem. It creates one. That's what the 15 men learned in Brooklyn. They thought they were ambushing one man. But they were really ambushing 50 years of loyalty, decades of debts, generations of respect. You can't shoot that. You can't intimidate it. You can only walk away and hope it doesn't follow you home. 2 weeks later, a dinner in Queens. The nephew sits in a booth by the window, coffee in front of him, untouched. An older man slides into the seat across from him. Gray hair, expensive watch, calm eyes. This is someone who's seen things, done things. Someone who moves in circles the nephew only hears about. You know who I am? The nephew nods. Then you know why I'm here. Not really. The man smiles. I'm here to make sure what happened in Brooklyn doesn't happen again. I didn't start that. I know. That's why I'm here. The man leans back. You embarrassed some people. Powerful people. I sat in an apartment. Exactly. And somehow, that was enough to send 15 men running. That makes people nervous. Why? Because it means the old rules still apply. And a lot of people have been betting they don't. The nephew sips his coffee now. Finally, what do you want from me? Nothing. I'm just here to deliver a message. What message? Your uncle knew when to move and when to stay still. He knew when to fight and when to let his name do the fighting for him. The man leans forward. You've got the name, but you don't have his experience. And that makes you dangerous. Not to them, to yourself. I can handle myself. Can you? Because the next time, they won't send 15 men to an apartment. They'll send 2 to a parking lot. And no amount of phone calls will stop that. Silence. So what are you saying? I'm saying your uncle survived because he knew the game. He knew who to align with, who to avoid, who to respect, and who to bury. The man slides a card across the table. No name. Just a number. If you want to live past 30, you'll call that number. There are people who remember Bumpy. People who want to honor what he built. But they need to know you're serious. Serious about what? About not being reckless. About understanding that carrying his name means carrying his responsibility. The man stands. Your uncle didn't just protect himself. He protected entire blocks, entire communities. That's why people showed up for you. He buttons his coat. But if you start thinking you're untouchable, you'll end up like every other kid who thought a name was enough. He walks toward the door, stops. Legacy is a gift, but it's also a debt. Make sure you're willing to pay it. Then he's gone. The nephew sits there, card in his hand. He doesn't know if he'll call, doesn't know if he wants that life, but he knows one thing. Brooklyn proved his uncle's name still carries weight. Now the question is whether he's strong enough to carry it. That night, the nephew walks through Harlem, not hiding, not rushing, just walking. He passes the corner where Bumpy used to hold court. It's a Starbucks now. He passes the building where Bumpy kept an office. Condos now, expensive ones. Harlem's changed. The people changed. The buildings changed. The money changed. But some things didn't. The nephew stops at a park bench, sits down, looks around. An old man walks by, sees him, stops. You Bumpy's nephew? Yeah. The old man smiles. He saved my brother once. 1963. Some cops were going to frame him for something he didn't do. Bumpy stepped in, made it go away. How? I don't know. But my brother walked free the next day. We never forgot that. The old man reaches into his pocket, pulls out a worn business card. Bumpy's name on it. Faded ink. 40 years old. I kept this, just in case I ever got the chance to say thank you. He hands it to the nephew. Give it to your kids one day. Tell them what it meant to have someone like Bumpy looking out for people who had nobody. The old man walks away. The nephew stares at the card. Bumpy Johnson. No title. No address. No phone number. Just a name. And somehow, that was enough. The nephew thinks about the 15 men. Thinks about the 30 people who showed up. Thinks about the old man with the cane. The woman from church. The guy who got saved in 1965. They didn't show up because they had to. They showed up because Bumpy made them feel like they mattered. Like their block mattered, their family mattered, their life mattered, in a world that told them they didn't. That's not just power, that's love. The kind you can't fake, can't buy, can't inherit. You have to earn it. Bumpy earned it by being present, by being consistent, by being someone people could count on when everything else fell apart. The nephew realizes something. He's been living off interest, but at some point, he'll have to make his own deposits, build his own loyalty, earn his own respect. The name got him through Brooklyn, but it won't get him through the rest of his life. Not unless he becomes worthy of it. He pulls out his phone, looks at the card the man gave him, then looks at the card from the old man. Two paths. One leads deeper into the game, into alliances and debts and wars that never end. The other leads somewhere else. Somewhere Bumpy never got the chance to go. A life outside the streets, outside the weight of a name that demands you sacrifice everything to uphold it. He doesn't know which one he'll choose, but he knows this. Bumpy Johnson survived by being smarter than everyone else, by seeing the game 3 moves ahead, by knowing when to stand and when to disappear. The nephew isn't Bumpy. He's just a man who shares his blood. But maybe that's enough. Maybe the lesson isn't to be Bumpy. Maybe the lesson is to remember what Bumpy stood for. Order, protection, loyalty, legacy, and to carry that forward whatever form it takes. Brooklyn didn't just prove the name still matters. It proved that what the name represents still matters. That people still hunger for leaders who protect instead of exploit, who build instead of destroy, who stand for something bigger than themselves. Bumpy's been gone for 50 years, but that hunger, it's still here, waiting for someone to feed it. The nephew stands, pockets both cards, and walks into the Harlem night, not as Bumpy Johnson's nephew, not as a gangster, not as a target, just as a man trying to figure out what kind of legacy he wants to leave behind. Because in the end, that's what power really looks like. Not the ability to survive, but the choice of what to do with the time you're given. Bumpy chose to build, to protect, to matter. Now it's the nephew's turn to choose. And whatever he decides, Brooklyn will remember. Just like it remembered Bumpy. Because some names don't fade. They just wait. For the next chapter, for the next generation, for someone brave enough to carry the weight, and wise enough to know what it costs.